Hey guys, it's Libby, and today I am filming my August wrap-up, I believe with a bunch of other videos, so get used to this shirt. In August, I read 5 books by 3 authors, all of whom I have read more than 10 books by, so it was a month of faves. I only have a physical copy of one of them, that is When Did You See Her Last by Lemony Snicket, which is the second book in the All the Wrong Questions series. I also read the first book as an ebook, which is called Who Could That Be at This Hour? This series has very difficult titles to remember. So this is a prequel series to the series of unfortunate events. I would really recommend reading it after a series of unfortunate events. I think Snicket, Handler, wrote them with the intention of them being read by themselves, but there are a lot of Easter eggs that you will only enjoy if you already know all about series of unfortunate events. These books are one continuous story as opposed to the more episodic style of series of unfortunate events. These are middle grade books, so they tell the story of when Lemony Snicket was a young man and he went on an investigation with his chaperone to a once seaside town called Stained by the Sea, where all of the water has been drained away because the main industry of Stained by the Sea was ink, which was harvested from octopi, but now since there are fewer octopi to give up their ink, they've had to drain the sea to get access to the remaining octopodes, and like get the ink out of them in a very unpleasant way. So we're in a very run-down, kind of New England-y feeling town. This is a very noir type of series in the way that Series of Unfortunate Events is rather gothic-y. I think this is actually even more noir than the other is gothic-y. So there's a lot of like very stilted conversations, which I enjoy. I can envision people not enjoying this series, but I do. I consider this to be a 4-star series, and I don't have the brain power to separate out each book, so I gave both books in the series that I read 2 stars. And I'm currently in the middle of reading the 3rd book in the series, but I do not know where it is. So that's on hold for a couple of days. Hopefully I find it. Then I read 2 Regency romances by Tessa. Darrow. The first was the Governess Game, and the second was the Wallflower Wager. These are the 2nd and 3rd books in her Girl Meets Duke series. So I rather enjoyed the Duchess deal in all of its like Baroque exaggeration, which came out 2 years ago. Governess Game came out last year, and Wallflower Wager came out in August, and I read it on release day, which was maybe not a good idea. We'll talk about that when we get to that one. So the Governess Game, it's basically a book that is fine. I find it difficult to talk about because everything that happened in it was fine. Nothing in it was bad. I just was not excited about any of it, really. Our heroine is a young woman named Alexandra Mountbatten who makes her living by setting people's clocks accurately. So she sets her personal watch by the Greenwich, or is it the Greenwich clock? Some really well done clock every 2 weeks, and then she goes around and resets the clocks of the wealthy to the right time so that rich people always know what time it is. And she is trying to get a new customer, but due to a mix-up in living arrangements, she ends up encountering not the housekeeper for her interview, but the master of the house, who is the like notorious rake. Do I remember his name? Is it Nicholas? Chase, I was totally off, who is somewhat upset because he has acquired the guardianship of his 2 sisters, nieces. I think they're his nieces? Maybe they're his cousins. I don't know, 2 little girls. And he thinks Alexandra is the governess, and so he hires her, and she doesn't realize she's being hired as a governess, so she's like, sure, and then she gets taken upstairs to take care of these 2 crazy little girls. And she's like, what? And everything goes on from there. As I said, this book genuinely inspired no opinions in me, so I gave it 3 stars as the most mediocre rating possible. If you want a good governess romance, may I suggest Rules for a Proper Governess by Jennifer Ashley, which is great, maybe my favorite romance novel. So I read The Governess Game to warm up for the Wallflower wager, which was getting a lot of really good buzz. People were like, I think this is even better than the Duchess deal, guys. It's a really great book. And I was kind of disappointed, which may be the book's fault, but may also be my fault. So I woke up at 5 a.m. on release day to read this book, and I was mostly finished with it by breakfast and completely finished with it by lunch. So I don't really remember a lot of the things that happened, and it also did not make that strong of an impression on me. Both of the characters are very, like, conceptually big. There's a lot going on with them. So our heroine is Lady Penelope Campion Penny to her friends, and she, even though she's the daughter of an earl, she doesn't really hang out in society, and most people think that she's weird because she collects unwanted animals, so like pets that other people don't want, she takes in and takes care of and is kind of obsessed with. So she has like a two-legged dog, a giant heifer, a goat with digestive problems, an otter. I don't know why anyone wanted a pet otter, but apparently they did. And a somewhat scandalous figure has just moved in right next door to her. His name is Gabriel Duke, named the Duke of Ruin, because he makes his money by ruining members of the aristocracy, financially ruining them. So he grew up poor and hates rich people, so he just wants to take all of their money. So he like gets very good lawyers who like find out the weaknesses in their financial portfolio, and then he ruins whatever their investments they have. Right now he's just sunk one man and bought this house next to Penny, and he's giving a bit of a spruce, and he does not want all these crazy animals living next door driving down his property values, so he is going to help her find loving homes for all of them. Could finding homes for lots of adorable animals possibly result in romance? I'll give you 3 guesses to that yes or no question. I gave this book 4 stars. I did like it more than The Governess Game. I did not like it as much as The Duchess deal, though, which was in some ways promised me by other reviewers. Other reviewers doing me wrong. And I have to say, throughout all 3 of these, I think there's something weird going on with the pacing. So I've read Tessa Dare's earlier novels, which are all like quite straightforward in like plot arcs, you know, the setup and payoff, the things that seem like they're going to be important are in fact important throughout the story. In all 3 of these, that's been a little off. Like the arcs, you know, it seems like the arcs aren't staying on the correct plane. They're like veering off to something else. I don't know if this visual metaphor is working, but like the things where we start off with don't really seem to end up in the place that is the most logical for a romance novel. And things that seem like they're going to be a big deal at the beginning end up being very much small potatoes, and then sometimes like a really big deal will be introduced in like the last quarter. And I'm not totally sure that this is bad. Like I can't tell if it's clearly intentional what Tessa Dare is doing, because it's happened in all 3 of the books in this series, and it hasn't happened in any of her other books. And I just can't tell if it's like good that I'm getting something unexpected, or if it's bad that the threads aren't quite connecting. Yes? Has anyone else read these books? Let me know if anyone else is getting this vibe. Okay, and then the last book that I read was an audiobook. It was The Trumpet-Major by Thomas Hardy, which was my last Hardy novel, which means there will be a Hardy video coming up. This was not great. This is a historical novel. It's set during the Napoleonic Wars. Hardy was writing in the 1870s, 80s, 90s. A lot of his books are set in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, which it was his childhood. And so he was writing about a time period that he did not have experience with, and it's a sort of love square pentagon. You know how Hardy does. Taking place on the South Coast, with everyone being afraid that Napoleon is constantly going to invade. I I didn't love the characters. We've got the structure of the love polygon is we've got like one girl and a bunch of guys. And the girl, Anne, when the book started, I really felt like she was about 12 years old. And so I was kind of expecting that like maybe she is a side character and we're going to get introduced to our actual leading lady later, or like maybe this is a prologue and we're gonna cut to several years after this. But no, I think she is like 17 or 18 or something, but she just really read like she was 12 to me. And then the romance situation ranged from like to distinctly unpleasant. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm done with the less good Hardys, because now I feel like I have permission to go back and reread the really good Hardys, because at a certain point I was like, Libby, you are rereading the same Hardys over and over again. You're not allowed to do any rereads until you have read all of his novels, and now I have done that. So Woodlanders, here I come for the second time. I would give this book a 2.5 stars. Thank you guys very much for watching. I will see you not too long from now.